Hey everyone, have you ever looked out your window, taken a walk in the park, or maybe watched a nature documentary and just marveled at the sheer variety of life on Earth? I mean, from microscopic bacteria to massive blue whales, our planet is literally crawling with life. But how do scientists actually make sense of it all? How in the world do they organize the millions of different living things sharing our planet? Well, today we're going to crack that code. We are going to explore what a species is, how scientists basically play detective to classify them, and why every single species is a perfectly balanced biological system.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. Right now, scientists have officially described more than 2 million species of living organisms on Earth. 2 million! And here is the craziest part about that number. They're constantly discovering new ones. Every single year, researchers find new insects hiding in rainforests, totally bizarre new fish down in the deep ocean, and new plants that were just sitting right there in plain sight. But to actually add a newly discovered living thing to that massive list, they have to know exactly what makes a species, well, a species.
So, what actually is a species anyway? It's definitely not just a random label. It's a very specific group of living organisms that are similar in their structure, their lifestyle, and their origin. But the absolute most important part? Individuals of the same species can freely interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Think about it this way. All domestic cats, whether you're talking about a tiny little Siamese or a super fluffy Persian, they all belong to one single species. Gray wolves? They belong to another, totally entirely different species. And it's not just animals. The silver birch tree in your neighborhood is its own separate plant species too.
Now, a species is not just a collection of identical animals or plants just kind of standing next to each other. It's an active, living, breathing biological system. And what does that actually mean? Well, it means a species is like a massive, interconnected network. It consists of many individuals, and those individuals are interacting with each other constantly. They share a common gene pool, which means all their genetic information is mixed and passed down. They occupy a certain territory on Earth, and incredibly, as a connected system, they're able to maintain their existence and survive for many, many generations. They adapt, they evolve, and they really live as one collective unit. Let's move to how this all builds up. Imagine you're a biologist and you find two birds that look almost exactly identical. How do you prove they're the exact same species? You can't just guess, right? You have to do some serious detective work. Scientists use 7 specific clues, known as criteria, to group organisms together. These criteria act like a strict checklist to make absolutely sure they're classifying life forms correctly. So let's investigate these clues. All right, we're going to speed run through the first 5 clues on this checklist. First up is the morphological criterion. This is all about external and internal structures. I mean, a tiger obviously looks different from an oak tree. But be careful, relying just on how things look on the outside is never enough to declare two things the same species. Next, we look deeper with the physiological clue, which is all about vital functions, like how different bird species have totally different breeding seasons. Third is biochemical. Even closely related species have unique proteins and hormones inside their bodies. Fourth is ecological, which shows how species adapt to their specific environment. Think of how a polar bear is perfectly built for the freezing Arctic, while a cactus is designed for a scorching desert. And finally, the geographical criterion looks at where they live. Kangaroos naturally live in Australia, while penguins occupy the southern hemisphere.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the 6th clue, the genetic criterion. We are zooming all the way down into the cells here. Every single species has its own unique set of genes and chromosomes. It's essentially nature's barcode. To put that into perspective, humans have 46 chromosomes. A cat has 38. A dog has 78. Because this genetic code is so incredibly specific, this is one of the absolute most reliable ways scientists can tell two species apart.
But we still have one final clue left, and honestly, it's the ultimate test, the reproductive criterion. So, the crucial point here is this. Individuals of the same species must be able to reproduce and have babies that can also have babies. If you take 2 horses, they can easily produce a foal. That foal grows up and can have its own babies. Boom, same species. But what happens if a horse and a donkey mate? They produce a mule. However, a mule is almost always sterile, meaning it literally can't reproduce. Because that reproductive chain is broken, it proves once and for all that horses and donkeys belong to 2 completely different species.
Now that we actually know what a species is, let's zoom out to the global map for a second. The territory where a biological system lives is called its species range. You can think of it as a species home address on Earth. And the size of this range varies wildly depending on things like the climate, what food is available, how they reproduce, and yes, even human activity. The polar bear, for example, is restricted just to the freezing Arctic. The koala lives only in certain parts of Australia, but then you have species like the house sparrow, which has a massive range and is found almost everywhere on the planet.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between two fascinating types of species, endemics and cosmopolites. Endemic species are kind of the homebodies. They are found only in one limited area, nowhere else in the world, often on isolated islands. We're talking about the Komodo dragon in Indonesia, the kiwi bird in New Zealand, or lemurs in Madagascar. Because they only have one small home, they are extremely vulnerable to environmental changes, and they really need our protection. But on the flip side, we have cosmopolites. These are the ultimate globetrotters. They're widespread across the world and are incredibly adaptable to completely different living conditions. The brown rat, the house sparrow, and the common dandelion are fantastic examples of cosmopolites.
So, what does this all mean? Why does all this scientific detective work actually matter? Why do we care if a bird is a cosmopolite or an endemic or exactly how many chromosomes a cat has? Well, because species diversity is literally the engine of our planet. Every single species has its own unique place in nature and plays a super important role in the ecosystem. If you remove one, the whole system feels the impact. Genetic diversity is what allows these species to adapt and survive when the environment changes. By studying species, understanding their criteria, and mapping their ranges, scientists aren't just making lists for fun. They're finding the best ways to protect the incredible biodiversity of our planet.
All right, pause for a second. I promised you some detective work, so let's see how much you've picked up. Time for a quick, high-energy pop quiz. Shout out the answers if you know them. Number 1, what is a species? Remember, it's that specific group that can interbreed. Number 2, which criterion is the absolute most important for proving two animals are the same species? Think about the horses and the mules. Number 3, what is an endemic species? Number 4, what about a cosmopolite species? And finally, number 5, why do we call a species a biological system instead of just a random group? Think about how they interact and share a gene pool. If you could answer those, you are well on your way to thinking like a true biologist.
To wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought. The fact that there are over 2 million biological systems out there, breathing, adapting, and surviving alongside us every single day is nothing short of magic. Understanding the millions of species that share our planet doesn't just help us pass a biology test, it helps us understand the brilliant complexity of life itself. So keep your eyes open, explore your backyard, discover the life around you, and remember your role in protecting nature. Thanks for joining me today, and keep learning.